on, Only Playbook fans? Me and Shovit are back for another episode. It is the playoffs. The playoffs are officially here. Cue the Jim Mora playoffs. I
Playoff?
remember you sending that GIF
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago when you officially clinched. It's like the best gift to send every year. Like is there a better gift to send to your fantasy football group than that playoffs one when you just like clinch the playoffs? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Nope.
Maybe if you win like the championship and you're hoisting something, but man, that first hurdle is getting to the playoffs, and you're in it, man. You're in the thick of things. And we talked about the gauntlet of players you had going up against you last night, and I think you kind of came out pretty well. I mean, if I'm
Yeah.
you, I'm feeling pretty happy.
Yeah, you said 40 points. Anything under 40 points, I'd be happy with. And I think total was around 38 with Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, and Kenneth Walker. Just
Oh,
38
dude.
points. I'm taking that all day, all day.
Oh, you got to feel great about that. The matchup worked in your favor. Them playing against San Francisco, and I mean the only guy really on his team outside of the big three that you have to worry about really dropping like a big hammer on you possibly is Austin Eckler. And
Yeah.
outside of that, I don't know, man. I think your lineup's got a pretty good chance. And I kept thinking it's 2 weeks, but it's only 1 week. So
Yeah.
yeah, for him to put up 38 between his quarterback, his RB2, and his wide receiver one, essentially. I mean, I think you're sitting pretty.
Yeah. My team just has to do this part. Justin Fields a tough matchup against the Eagles, but and then Antonio Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown with a tough matchup there against the Jets. But I like the other guys. I like Olave, Dalton Schultz, Chiefs defense against the Browns. So everyone else has to do their part. And then I'm gonna start J.K. Dobbins this week. And then Foreman. It's between Foreman, Dobbins, and Najee Harris. And I'm thinking Foreman and Dobbins are going to be the two running backs I go with. So hopefully they produce.
Yeah, and I think again because of the situation he is in now with three of his guys and the points he's at, it gives you a little bit of sigh of relief or
Yeah, that's
breathing
true.
room to even if you mess up between Dobbins and Najee or Foreman and Najee, Foreman and Dobbins, the gap between those three players isn't very, in my opinion, not catastrophic enough to where I think it's a matter of like 5 points or less, in my opinion, that even if you make the wrong decision, I think you're going to be okay. So again, that it's just being in your situation, not having anybody played, knowing that you haven't had really a dud yet, and you see three guys on his board where his quarterback didn't even put up 20, which that's kind of the baseline you want from your quarterback,
Yeah.
and both of his skilled players didn't put up 10 apiece, right? Neither of them put up 10.
None of
Yeah.
well, yeah, no. Geno Smith had 15 points, but yeah, Kenneth Walker
Yep.
9.9, DK Metcalf 9 points as well. So yeah,
Exactly, dude. You're under
yeah,
the 20. You're under the 20 for the quarterback and under the 10 for the skill positions. Yeah, I would love to be you right now. So let's see how the rest of the weekend shakes out, Shovit. Obviously, we got 3 games on Saturday too. So the grind comes a little earlier this weekend. And we have a lot to talk about, a lot of fantasy implications, injuries, and then we got to run through all of the previews. Without further ado, let's kick it off with water cooler talk. Injuries galore. I want to run through some injuries here. Some of these guys will definitely have implications for you in the playoffs. Some of them may not, but the domino effect of them being out could potentially have some playoff implications. So as of Friday night at 6:51 p.m. Eastern time, these are the players that have been ruled out for Week 15. Devontae Parker ruled out. Broncos, a slew of weapons. Russell Wilson is not going to play. Cortland Sutton is out. And Kendall Hinton also out. Damian Pierce, Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, a three-headed monster for the Texans, none of which are playing. So those guys are gone. Justin Fields getting no help at the receiver position. Darnell Mooney already on the IR. Chase Claypool also out and on the IR. So I think he's out for season as well. Treylon Burks didn't make it back from injury in time. He is officially listed out for the Tennessee Titans, who desperately need pass catchers. Mike White, the story for the Jets. He's still, to this point, the latest reports I've read is he's going to multiple doctors seeking opinions, third opinions, fourth opinions. He just needs one doctor to clear him to play, and he wants to play that badly. And I'm sure he understands that the Jets are in such a shittier position when Zach Wilson's playing quarterback.
yeah,
So for the fact that he wants to play and for the better of the team, he is just trying to find a doctor that will clear him so he can play. But as of now, he's listed as out with that concussion. And then the inevitable, Lamar Jackson also going to miss Week 15. That is a big one for playoffs. Obviously, people are definitely having to pivot if you have Lamar and you are in the playoffs here this week. Players that are listed as questionable that we're going to need to monitor, Shovit, heading into tomorrow and Sunday. The Patriots, Jacoby Myers, Ramondre Stevenson, and Damian Harris, all all listed as questionable. This is one of the biggest coin tosses that we'll dive deeper into as we get into this game. But the running back situation there is not straight, not surefire. So again, that's something that, you could be, anybody can be playing possible waiver games close to that matchup on Sunday, because if Stevenson's out, Harris still has that injury designation. And it sounds like Harris has a more likely chance of playing than Stevenson, but he's only logged limited practice. So all of a sudden this could be that Pierre Strong and what is it?
Harris, the other
Kevin
Harris.
Harris,
Yeah.
Kevin Harris as the other two guys. And if that's kind of the breakdown of that, then, you'll have to really dig into the advanced numbers to give yourself a chance to see who's going to be the guy there. Josh Jacobs on the other side, who they're facing, the Raiders, he's also listed as questionable, but I expect him to play. A couple other guys, Trevor Lawrence, who's been hot recently, probably a guy that people are streaming and maybe got hot, and there he's your quarterback heading into the playoffs. He is also listed as questionable. I do think he's going to play though, but it is not, what's weird is it's not as a result of that weird tackle that we saw last week where he kind of spun around and left the game and stuff. Apparently it's a second injury that came about during practice. So that's the only concern is, you never want to have new injuries surface. But with that being said, I still expect him to play. Kadarius Toney looks like he's questionable. Doesn't really matter. Should not be on any fantasy radars. For the Cardinals, Hollywood Brown also going to be listed as questionable. That is something to monitor. He could be a guy that you play in your flex. Saints tight end Juwan Johnson also listed as questionable. When he does play, all that guy does is catch touchdowns. So at least you probably don't have to be on the opposite end of that if he doesn't decide to play and somebody gets lucky and starts him. And then your boy Shovit, Kenny Pickett, also concussion protocol. It looks like he's officially listed as doubtful. So we know typically that doubtful means probably not going to play, which means I think it's going to be
Mason
Mitch
Rudolph.
Trubisky, but
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson and the
Yeah.
receiving crew are vouching for Mason Rudolph to get a shot. So I saw the quote about with that Deontay Johnson came out and said, he's like, oh, I think he deserves a chance and stuff. And if that's not, as much of a, that's giving kind of Rudolph a little nudge, it's
Yeah.
also in a way sliding Mitch Trubisky, right? So I think this goes to show that the receiving core at this point understands what's going to happen if Trubisky's the quarterback. So rather than face that, they're like, let's get another guy in here who we haven't seen yet this year, possibly to give us a little bit of a spark. Do you have any thoughts on that quarterback situation?
I agree. I've seen enough from Mitch Trubisky, and like the interceptions that he had, like he should not have been throwing those over the middle of the field where the linebacker can get those. And I want to see a little bit. I just want to see something different. Kenny Pickett's is doubtful. Mitch Trubisky, I've seen his ceiling, I guess. And so Mason Rudolph, who like in during preseason looked decent, looked like he improved a little bit. So yeah, get him out there and see what we can do. I mean, we're not going to make the playoffs as the way it stands right now. So, but here's the other side to it too. The other side is like Mason Rudolph may not be there next year. Mitch Trubisky signed a 2-year contract with the Steelers. So Mitch Trubisky is going to be the backup. So if you know that Rudolph is for sure not going to be there, then I guess you start Mitch Trubisky. But temper your expectations with the Steelers this week.
Yeah. Again, that quarterback situation, we talked about it at the beginning of this season. When you don't have one surefire guy, at least you have 3 guys you could possibly pivot to. And right now, you're probably searching for that secret fourth option that doesn't exist.
Right?
So
Yeah.
weird
my
place to be.
option?
Yeah, exactly. Not everybody gets a Mr. Relevant that just
Right.
becomes relevant. Players that are officially in on Sunday. Justin Fields doesn't carry an injury designation. He was ill. He is good to go. David Montgomery also was ill for the Bears. He is also good to go. For the Steelers, Deontay Johnson is going to play. Pat Freiermuth also doesn't carry an injury designation, so he's going to play. Dallas Goedert officially activated from the IR. Looks like he's going to give it a go for the Eagles. So that's a big, tight end that's been premier when he's played. That's going to be probably a question we ask ourselves when we talk about the Eagles game is whether you safely deploy him right away or whether you want to give it a week or so. Washington running backs, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, both going to play. Amari Cooper for the Browns is going to give it a go. And like I said, Lamar Jackson was out. Tyler Huntley was also on the injury report, but he has cleared concussion protocol. So he is officially going to start for the Ravens. So they don't have to look for the third stringer there. Those are the players that are officially in, questionable, and out as of 6:57 Eastern time on Friday, December 16th. Again, games start on Sunday or Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So these injuries can move fast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at OnlyPlaybook if you want the latest injury information. Anything I may have missed there, Shove It?
No, I think you covered it all.
Perfect. That is injuries. Shove it. Let's talk about the football game that transpired last night. The 49ers traveled to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. 49ers on the road, favored by 3 points. Over under sitting at 42.5. Well, San Francisco, no problem covering the spread on the road in Seattle. A little bit of a rainy weather, 12th man, all that stuff. They win 21-13. No problems for Mr. Purdy. They are 10-4 now. They're only a half game behind the Minnesota Vikings for the number 2 seed in the NFC. So as good as they're looking and as great as their schedule looks, it looks like they could easily win out, which means Minnesota consequentially also needs to win out to hold on to that second spot. Seattle drops to 7-7. They're officially out of the playoffs as of now, so they're going to need to win out or possibly win 2, lose 1, and get some help to make the playoffs. Again, the 49ers, man, plug and play. We talk about the running back position. How are they making the quarterback position a plug and play? I mean, that, again, not enough is being said about Kyle Shanahan and the
Yeah.
way he is conducting this offense. It is truly, truly remarkable, truly next level. Like, I can't think of another coach, another system that you could literally just shuffle quarterbacks and they just have the ability to succeed because they're put in the most advantageous positions. And Brock Purdy becomes even a decent fantasy player. 217 through the air, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He does what every 49er and fantasy fans want him to do, which is feed CMC. CMC 26 carries, 108 yards and a touchdown, six catches, 30 yards. And Mr. Kittle, man, Mr. Kittle with no Deebo Samuel, who was going to be the biggest benefactor? Boy, it was George Kittle. He only caught 4 passes. 2 of them went for touchdowns, 93 yards, probably his best game of the year, maybe 1 or 2, top 1 or top 2 best games of the season. Comes at a pretty advantageous time if you rolled the dice and played Kittle in the playoffs. The other guy that maybe was in playoff lineups, Brandon Ayuk, because of the Deebo Samuel injury. I was playing against Ayuk in my other league, and luckily only 2 for 19 for him. So quieter day for Ayuk, which, probably hurt some fantasy players and helped the opposers there. On the Seahawks side, Geno Smith, 238 through the air, just 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Ran the ball once for 18 yards. The running game didn't really get it going. We talked about it. That was going to be the difference maker. Ken Walker III coming back from injury. Didn't necessarily look injured. It just looked like he didn't have a ton of space to run. 12 for 47. Did catch 4 passes for 32 yards to salvage a somewhat decent fantasy day. And the receivers, they did their thing, but none of them found the end zone. Lockett, 7 for 68. DK, 7 for 55. Noah Fant became the guy that found the end zone at 5 for 32 and a score. I think as the week was progressing after we recorded last week, I truly thought this was a letdown spot for the 49ers. They've been rolling. Short week. Again, the book's out on Purdy. They're traveling. The weather's not great. And Seattle's in a desperate must-win situation. But when push comes to shove it in this league, if you can't stop the run, you're not going to win very many football games.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I thought the defense played really well for the 49ers. Nick Bosa was getting sacks, and there was that one call where, it's a little
Oh,
suspect,
God.
the weight on Geno Smith. That really
Yeah.
should have been an interception. I think interception touchdown, if they don't call that penalty. But I think the defense played really well, and this 49ers defense, this whole team is just a scary, scary team. And the guys on, first of all, like those guys that are on Amazon, those commentators, I
Mhm.
absolutely hate listening to anything that they have to say. Like Richard Sherman is
Yeah.
decent, but everybody
Yeah.
else is just kind of ridiculous, and it's just the most annoying part of Thursday night. But they did say that any team that is that has to play the 49ers are not going to look forward to playing them. They're going to be a difficult matchup just because they can score touchdowns, and with Purdy right now being accurate, right? He's not like I think he had 100% completion in the first quarter. So he was playing really well, and Kittle was also like wide
Yeah.
open with both of those touchdowns. But then
It's fucking
the
scheme, man.
and able to have yards after catch even without Deebo Samuel. They're just a complete team, and they're playing like it. So it's gonna be hell for anyone who has to face them.
Yeah, they are the team. I mean, obviously the Eagles are the juggernaut and the Cowboys defense is scary, but complete package football team, the team that scares me the most right now is absolutely San Francisco. And that's crazy to say considering they're on their 3rd string quarterback. Like, I mean, that's just
Yeah,
absolutely nuts. But again, it doesn't seem to matter. Still waiting to see the 49ers maybe take on a, top 10, top 5 defense to see kind of how Purdy looks differently in that situation. But as of now, man, there's nothing stopping this team. No Deebo, no problem. No, CMC, Elijah Mitchell goes down, no problem. Jimmy G, Trey Lance, like you just name it. Just keep naming players that are getting injured for this team, and they still find ways to win. At 10-4 right now, they're looking really, really good. That was the Thursday night football game. Again, NFL is good to us this week, Shovit. We have 3 games on Saturday, so let's jump into the action with the rundown. I'll kick things off. First game tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time. My Minnesota Vikings are hosting the Indianapolis Colts. Vikings favored by 4 points at home, over under sitting at 47.5. Minnesota gets another shot to clinch the North. They can clinch with a win or with the Detroit loss. The story for fantasy purposes here is everybody on Indianapolis seems appealing because we know how historically bad this Minnesota Vikings defense has been. They're making players like Mac Jones look like, passing savants when that is not the case. And, last week they had, not only Mac Jones, but like Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, like Devontae Parker, like anybody that's playing against that defense looks good. Like DJ Chark for the Lions, Josh Reynolds for the Lions. It doesn't matter who's out there. They're getting open and they're finding ways to put up fantasy numbers. So if you're that desperate, if you literally lost Lamar Jackson, you lost Kyler Murray, you lost somebody, and somehow your free agency is as slim pickings as they come, I do not hate Matt Ryan as a streamer this week. I mean, that is some big, roll the dice, big kahunas move in the playoffs, especially again. Anything can happen. The Vikings can finally make an adjustment and all things can change, or they cannot, or they can just continue to roll out the same shit, and that same shit should happen. So Matt Ryan, I don't hate, which obviously makes all of the receivers intriguing. Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Alec Pierce. Again, it's not like the wide receiver ones are the only wide receivers dominating against Minnesota. Again, DJ Chark and Josh Reynolds had better games than Amon-Ra St. Brown last week. And then you had Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne had better games than Jacoby Myers and Devontae Parker the week before. So again, second and third receivers are getting open. And if the first read is not there, other guys are open. So I do think, it's kind of Russian roulette in terms of which receivers to start, but your chances are higher. I think 66%, 2 out of these 3 receivers are going to have decent fantasy days. So, roll your dice if you want. I still put Pierce number 3 here behind these 2 other guys, just because MPJ is the wide receiver number 1, like just based on where he ranks on the depth chart. So by default, he's the guy. Paris Campbell seems to get a ton of underneath volume. So if you're looking for targets, he's the guy. And again, this defense is atrocious. So all those guys, suffice to say, you could start them and dividends could pay, but they are all very, very risky moves. The obvious starts in this game, Jonathan Taylor, you have to start on the Vikings side. Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and TJ Hawkinson must deploy. But I think this is a pretty solid get-right spot for Minnesota. Funny story, if the Vikings win, this will be the first time an NFL team defeats an opposing NFL team whose head coach's name is the day that they lose. So Jeff Saturday loses on Saturday. That has never happened in the history of the NFL. So there is history to be made on Saturday if the Vikings can beat Jeff Saturday and the Indianapolis Colts, which I think this is a good get-right spot for them. This is a good opponent, not a lot to play for, shuffling the coaching situation. And again, Matt Ryan's old as dirt. So despite having good statistics and despite probably putting up 300 yards and a couple touchdowns, I think turnovers and sacks will still ensue those.
That's so interesting. Is Jeff Saturday the only coach who has a last name that's the day of the week? Like, is there a Monday?
You act like I know that information. No, I didn't look that far into it, unfortunately. But that's why these stats exist, right? Because they're outliers, and no one's ever like, well, has there ever been another head coach that has a last name or a first name with the day of the week? Oh no, okay. So what a great stat! What a great outlier. So that could totally be the case. But regardless, history can be made. I mean, I think maybe the opposite too. I don't know if Saturday's ever won on Saturday. So maybe if he wins, that also becomes history. So either way, man, first game of the NFL slate on Saturday, a lot of history to be made.
Wow. As if you didn't need anything to like make you watch
No.
the game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, there you go. How will history be made? All right. That takes us to the next game, Baltimore Ravens at Cleveland Browns. So Cleveland is favored by 3 points, surprisingly, even though the Ravens have a winning record. Over-under is at 37 points. Ravens win. They keep the top spot in the AFC North. They have the same record as the the Bengals, that's as the Bengals. So if they win, they keep the top spot. If they don't, then the Bengals come in. The Cincinnati Bengals. I couldn't remember the city for some reason. The Browns are still the Browns are still in the hunt. They do need to win to keep their playoff hopes alive, but they're about 13 in that rank of teams in the hunt, and so it's a tough.
A lot would have to go right for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for the fantasy implications of this game for the Ravens, Tyler Huntley is a decent start here if you are slim on quarterbacks. Kyler Murray was injured. You talked about Matt Ryan. I think Tyler Huntley could be just the fact that he is able to run the ball, get those rushing yards, and hopefully he can connect with Mark Andrews or some of his other receivers to get you a couple of touchdowns. That's what you're kind of banking on. J.K. Dobbins, he had a big game last week. I hope that continues this week. I'm going to rely on that. I didn't start him last week because I wasn't sure. This week, I think that it's a full send on J.K. Dobbins. But if he has a dud day, I am gonna, I'll take it. But I am fully expecting the Ravens to run the ball against the Browns, and then Mark Andrews, another guy from the Ravens that you're gonna start, as he is gonna play
Whether you like it or not. Yeah.
yeah, whether you like it or
He's like
not.
a default start, right? Yeah. I mean,
Right.
and the other thing that's going to help the running show of it is the weather is supposed to be super windy here. They're looking at like 14 to 19-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh
So
wow.
I expect fewer passes and more running, which definitely helps that Ravens offense and the Dobbins start.
Right. Okay, and then for the Browns, Deshaun Watson, you're probably not going to start him yet, but coaches are saying that they're going to start throwing the ball deep with him. So that means Amari Cooper is questionable, but Donovan Peoples-Jones, I like his chances in this game. I think that Deshaun Watson's kind of connecting a little bit more. He played better last game, so he is not a start, but just someone that you still keep on your bench. Nick Chubb, you're going to start him because it's Nick Chubb, and then David Njoku is a solid start. Against the Ravens as well. So as far as the game, I think that, like I said, Deshaun Watson, he's building a rapport with his offense, and Browns are in a good situation to win this game. No Lamar Jackson, so that could go well for the Browns, who had a really good game. The first game that Deshaun Watson came back, it was their defense that scored 3 touchdowns to allow them to win the game. So you can see that with the Ravens. You're hoping that you kind of get that with Tyler Huntley as the quarterback. The one thing that's going really well for the Ravens that is the Browns, strength is that they allow only 81.2 yards rushing per game. And so the defense for the Ravens has gotten better. All in all, I just think that with the Browns, I think they're in a really good position, and I think that because Deshaun Watson's getting better and better, he brings that X factor that can allow the Browns to win this game, and hence they're favored by 3 points.
Yeah, and then the Ravens rookie linebacker David Ojabo, the guy that they drafted, who he was projected to go top 10, and then he actually like tore his Achilles or ACL during his pro day workouts. He is set to make his season debut. So that Ravens run defense, it's already good. They're getting another stud potential linebacker in the fold there, so that should only help that run defense a
Yeah.
little bit more. But again, that weather is going, in my opinion, going to dictate a lot of running, and that certainly favors the Ravens because they're good at stopping the run and they're great at running the football, and the Browns can't necessarily stop the run. So weird line saying the Cleveland's favored by 3, in my opinion. A lot of what this game tells me is I would lean the Ravens +3. Last game on Saturday night, probably maybe the matchup of the week. The Miami Dolphins traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. It is going to be cold, and weather is going to be a factor here as well. Rain and snow is supposed to be in the mix. Buffalo favored by 7 points, over under 44. I mean, again, it's hard from a fantasy perspective to think about games, especially when weather is going to be a factor, because that can take a lot of prominent players out of the question. Passing game in this game, can be suspect. Obviously, Josh Allen's a guy that doesn't matter what the situation is. He'll run the football himself. So he's an automatic start. But we saw even just against the Jets last week, a little bit of shitty weather, and there was not a lot of pass work being done, barring the Jets are a great defense and the Dolphins struggle. So it's really, can weather counteract the fact that the Dolphins defense isn't really that great? So I do still think the Bills wide receivers have a chance to eat. Diggs should have a big bounce back game. He's going to be in your lineup if you're in the playoffs. Gabe Davis obviously has that boomer bust situation. If the weather clears up, this is a big boom week potential for Gabe Davis. The Dolphins secondary is not great. They've been cooked this week. And just look out for Cole Beasley. I know Isaiah McKenzie had been the slot receiver. They brought Beasley back into the fold, and they really liked Beasley when he was there in the past. So that's somebody that could get a lot of crucial third down catches there. But I do expect, again, even if the weather is not great or it starts to get better, there has to be some form of running game going here. And I still lean Devin Singletary. Nothing has led me to believe outside of 1 week of James Cook that he has assumed the role. But if you're able to avoid this situation, I avoid it entirely for the running back situation, but not everybody has the luxury of having somebody maybe behind Singletary. So if you're going to pick one, pick Singletary. On the other side, Tyreek Hill, he's the only automatic lock start. Doesn't matter quarterback, range, snow, shun, whatever. He'll pick up footballs and run them into the end zone. He's done it. The evidence is there. So he doesn't need somebody to throw him the football. So he is an automatic fantasy start. No questions asked. The guy that's been truly, truly disappointing, Jalen Waddle, personally, I don't think he's 100% still. Like, he just doesn't look like he's running as crisp and as fast and smooth as we've seen him do this year, and he has done in the past at Alabama. And, the weather and the matchup, I'm worried if I'm Tua owner. If I'm a Tua owner, I'm looking elsewhere. There are better opportunities. Even Matt Ryan, I would consider over Tua in this situation, because we saw a shift in what defenses can do. And even the Chargers defense, a defense that's not great, figured out just by playing a certain way defensively, regardless of all the shitty players they have on the field, Tua's going to struggle. So Bills defense, a lot better. I expect them to adjust. They've already played once, and the Dolphins came out victorious in that upset week 3. And that was really when the Dolphins went on that big run. So I think Buffalo is coming for blood here. And Jeff Wilson, the running back for the Miami Dolphins, is limited all week with a hip injury. I think he'll maybe play, but I think it's going to be one of those very, very dicey situations. The guy that you should be looking at is Raheem Mostert. Some guy in my other league just dropped him, but my lineup for my playoffs is so stacked that I have nowhere to put him. I just picked him up and put him on my bench because I think he's got a chance to have a good game, and I don't want anybody else picking him up. So he's sitting on my bench nicely. Hopefully he goes off, but that is what I expect the situation to be. Again, a lot of variables that are out of our control. The weather, obviously monitor that heading into game time. The weather is going to be the difference between, do you throw Gabe Davis in there or do you not? There are going to be decisions that are need to be made. Jalen Waddle is another one that I think could be weather dependent, especially because even in nice weather, he hasn't been producing. So obviously 2 negatives, it's not going to equal a positive in this situation. So I think Buffalo gets revenge here. I think the Dolphins need to figure some things out before this thing spirals down, because this is really the first adjustment we've seen teams make to this Dolphins offense. And that adjustment really made the Dolphins offense look very, very bad. So now the chess piece, or the chess move, is back on Mike McDaniel to make some kind of change, if you will.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but one of the things I'm highly invested in is James Cook, and he's on my bench, and he had a really solid game 2 weeks ago. Last week, not so well, and so I was considering dropping him, and I don't know if I should or not. And if I drop him, I would pick up tight end Okonkwo from the Titans, and and I was just about to push the button, but what happens is every time I do these kind of things, when I release a running back like that, Singletary gets injured, or like the RB1 gets injured, and then James Cook. But like, I'm like actually considering dropping James Cook for Okonkwo, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
That's awesome. That is so awesome that you brought that up to me, bro, because just earlier, Friday, December 16th, like 5 hours ago, 1:36 p.m., I, in my other league, dropped James Cook as well. He was sitting on my bench. And you know who I picked up? I picked up Greg Dulcich. So I also decided that there was no world where I was potentially with my lineup, and a lot, like, again, Singletary would basically have to get hurt, right? And there's only 2-3 weeks left in fantasy. So for you to bank on the fact that in one of these next 2 or 3 weeks, that RB1 is going to go down, very slim. Pair that with the fact that if you already have a pretty strong running back committee, there's really no reason to stash him. Yeah. And if your maneuverability is the tight end position, who is the starter that you have right now with Okonkwo on the bench?
That's the thing. It's Dalton Schultz.
Okay. So Dalton, but I don't hate it, because what's funny is in my league now, currently I'm carrying 3 defenses. I have the Chiefs starting. I have Cowboys and 49ers. And I'm also carrying 3 tight ends, bro, because I have Freiermuth starting. I picked up Ingram because he was on the bench. And now I love Dulcich based on the matchup. So I'm between those 3 guys. So I think, again, if your like core roster is set, then if you really don't see yourself ever plugging in James Cook, unless Singletary gets hurt, Cook is starting, which, again, you can't expect that to happen, then I'm totally fine dropping James Cook right now, because there's only so much time left, and his upside is not high enough right now that you're even going to consider starting him in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I like Okonkwo because, Treylon Burks is hurt, and
they have nobody to catch the football. And this guy's basically another receiver in a tight end's body kind of guy, right? So he's a freak. So they're going to have to throw the football to somebody. And again, I don't care that Hooper's getting targets too. They're playing both of these guys because they have no receivers to catch. So I love Okonkwo. It's like getting to a situation in the season where we went from like hit or miss scarcity at the tight end position to right now, I have like 3 guys on my roster, a guy on the waivers, and I'm like, oh, I kind of want to play him. Chig's on the waivers. And I'm like, I don't know. I have like 4 guys I can choose from. So it's a weird year with the tight end position, but I do love that. Drop Cook, pick up the tight end. You're not going to start Cook, and you can't bank on the fact that Singletary is going to get hurt next week or this week.
Solid. All right. Moving on. Philadelphia Eagles at Chicago Bears. Philadelphia is favored by 9 points. Over under is at 48.5 points. Fantasy wise, on the Eagles side, you're just gonna full send, just about everybody. Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders. Dallas Goedert is eligible to come back this week, so if he plays, which I don't remember what you said with that one.
He's going to play. He's supposed to play. Yep.
He's gonna play, so you got to start Dallas Goedert as well. So yeah, full send on all 5 of those starters for the Eagles. On the Bears side, Justin Fields has a tough matchup, but I think he is matchup proof, and I think you definitely have to continue to start him if you have him on your team. David Montgomery with a in the middle of the season, we saw the Eagles run defense a little sus, and so you're kind of hoping that's what happened. That's what happens this game as well. So you're going to start David Montgomery, and Cole Kmet is not a bad start either. Tight end. He did see I think like 7 targets last game when they played, not last week but the week prior. So you're going to start. You can start Cole Kmet as well. But as far as the game script goes, Fields has been great in fantasy, but that hasn't led to wins. They're on a 6-game losing streak, and now they're going to have to play the Philadelphia Eagles, the number 1 team in the NFL right now. This defense is just going to have a tough time covering AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Jones, all these guys that can make an impact on the game, and their offensive line is pretty freaking good too. So I think the Eagles will win this game. 9 points of the spread is high, but I think it's definitely doable against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, the problem here is I do believe in the Bears offense from a running standpoint. I think their run blocking offense has been like substantially better. And a lot of it has to do with Fields making it easier for the blockers, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has now realized that Fields like athletic ability rushing wise is special. It's truly special. It's next level. So that's kind of what gives him that fantasy floor. That's what makes him matchup proof. And I think just adding that element onto the field, it eases everything else. It makes David Montgomery more of a good fantasy player. And so it also helps that offensive line. It also helps Cole Kmet because that's that safety valve. And that's the only guy that really, again, when the defenses and the linebackers come up, Kmet's across that middle for Field. So I do, despite the Eagles being a juggernaut, their defense has been susceptible. Like they're getting Jordan Davis back, and he's coming back from injury. 2 weeks ago, he didn't look the same. Last week, he got limited work. Linval Joseph has been in there. Him and Sue have been rotating, but Linval Joseph per PFF has been one of the worst graded run stoppers since he's come back and signed. And that's just because what it looks like now is he is huge. He's humongous, but he doesn't have that lateral mobility that's as quick as it used to be. So if the guy's not running right up the middle at Joseph, where obviously he's going to be a wall, he's not getting to move laterally enough. So there are holes in the run game. And I think, again, the Bears do a great job of scheming to run the football for Justin Fields. That read option with David Montgomery, I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't feel uncomfortable starting Fields. I feel great about it. I honestly feel great about starting Montgomery in this matchup, even though they can go down. Again, the thing we've seen with the Chicago Bears, Shovit, is even if they're not even trying to win football games. And it's almost kind of like, to me, borderline obvious. Like they're doing just enough to lose these football games, but Fields looks incredible. So he's making the progression. So I think like, even if they're losing, they're still going to use Fields to his strength, which is running, right? A lot of how Fields runs is read option. So Montgomery's value is still going to be there all 60 minutes, even if they're down, 35-17. Now, granted, if it goes like 49-0 and they bench their starters, then I can't, that's just another world. But I don't hate any of the Bears starters that you mentioned, Fields, Montgomery, Kmet, despite the Eagles being a juggernaut and expecting, in my opinion, them to win. Just because the Bears can run the football extremely well, they can control the clock. They have an opportunity, in my opinion, to cover the spread. But Fields is going to have to protect the football. When they're forced to throw, as long as he's not turning the football over, that gives him an opportunity because he can always win with his legs. So I think that spread, I think this game could be closer, but I've done this every week. I'm like, oh, these spreads for the Eagles are so high. Somebody's got to cover. And then they just win like 48-20. So I don't know, but the Bears pose the biggest threat to the Eagles, which is running the football and controlling the clock to at least make the game a little bit closer.
Yeah, and then 9 points gives a teaser opportunity. If you're gonna take the Eagles, I would take the teaser at bring that down to 3 points, and then
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe take the Bills as well or something like that.
Yeah. You could tease the Eagles to a field goal, which is not a bad spot at all.
Yeah.
Divisional battle in the NFC South. The Falcons travel to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Saints at home favored by 4 points, over under 43. Big story for this game. Desmond Ridder is officially going to get his first start. Marcus Mariota is on the IR. And believe it or not, this division is still wide open. Every team in this division is 2 games apart. So it's anybody's division, despite what, the perception may be about some of these teams. The Falcons, in my opinion, with Desmond Ridder's first game, he's not a run first quarterback. He never was in college. He just had enough legs to keep teams honest. I think you're going to see him utilize that more in the NFL just because, again, first start, he's not necessarily comfortable back there. And that's just what rookie quarterbacks usually lean into a little bit. And he can make that happen. So I do expect the Falcons to run the football a ton. And now the problem with doing that for fantasy purposes is there's no real clear running back anymore. Cordero Patterson, since his return from injury, he's not been the running back. They run this committee. Patterson's in there. He's only getting like 40 to 45% of the snaps. You have Algier and you still have Huntley. And now Huntley loves to catch passes as well. So it's a weird, like triple-headed monster where nobody's really safe, in my opinion. So I don't necessarily feel comfortable starting anybody on the Atlanta Falcons side. I think if you have Cordero Patterson, you could look at other options that may be better to you just because you're going to bank on the fact that Patterson has to be the guy that gets the touchdown. There is a good chance one of these three guys will get into the end zone, but I have no idea who. Yes, money tells me maybe Patterson's the best bet, but are you really going to bank on that in the playoffs? No, I don't personally think you should. Pass catchers, same thing. There's nobody on this pass catching side with a rookie quarterback. With every game that's transpired so far this year, nobody stood out. Drake London, in my opinion, is going to be a great receiver, but there's not enough fantasy value to start him. Obviously, there's no tight end right now with Pitts out, and whoever the backup doesn't matter. So I think from the Falcons offense, if you can, you stay away from everybody. For the Saints side, Alvin Kamara, I expect a real nice kind of bounce back game for him. He's been very, very disappointing. So if you did make the playoffs with Kamara on your roster, I think this is a week where he can bounce back. And Olave is a stud. He's a surefire start. Don't care the matchup, honestly. So Chris Olave, you're deploying. The only other upside guys, Taysom Hill, he's that weird guy where if you're the 6th seed or if you were the last seed to make the playoffs, your projections say you're going to lose by 20 to 25 points against your opponent because they're a juggernaut and your team is like scounging with Latavius Murray in the playoffs and crap like that. And your tight end is not Travis Kelce or maybe Mark Andrews. I don't hate taking a risk on Taysom Hill. The Falcons defense is not great and they could run a lot of read options and Taysom Hill could somehow randomly get 3 touchdowns. So again, if your tight end is not Travis Kelce and you're favored to heavily, heavily lose, these are the only ways you're going to have a chance to pull off an upset is if you be the ones and you play these guys. Now, the downside is this guy could also put up 2 points and you have to be willing to live with that. But that's why I said, if you're a guy that has a mid-tier tight end and you don't have Travis Kelce and your matchup is you're going to expect to lose by 20 to 25 points, deploy Taysom Hill. See what's the worst that could happen. You could still lose, which is what you're expected to do. Anyways, the defenses aren't great here, but it's unfortunate that the Falcons don't pose much of a, here's a guy that you want to start. Like there's not one guy on that team that I'm like, go ahead and throw him in your lineup. You're just going to have to hope that if you do start one of their running backs, it's probably Patterson or Algier. You just have to hope that one of those guys gets into the end zone.
Yeah, yeah. The range of outcomes for Taysom Hill is definitely high. I still like Greg Dulcich before I like Taysom Hill, but if you're trying to get that home run and against the Atlanta Falcons defense, why not?
That's the thing, right? I mean, even Greg Dulcich, for us who are like, we're in our matchups, like we have a good chance to actually win them. We
Yeah.
want a floor. But like I'm playing against Jake, my buddy Jake, and he's projected to lose by 25. And he already had Ayuk play last night who got 2.9, right? So, and his tight end right now is David Njoku, who's a solid tight end. He's been a solid tight end when he's played and stuff. But if I'm him, Njoku could be that guy. So he's a guy that maybe I don't play over Taysom Hill. But if you're starting like, even Evan Ingram, the fact that the chances of him having back-to-back multiple touchdown games, low, right? Or if you're playing a guy who has just nice floors, then that's a situation where maybe you want to deploy somebody like this. But yeah, if you're in a matchup or if you're expected to win and you just need a floor, do not start Taysom Hill.
All right, next up, Detroit Lions at New York Jets, and this line is dead even, over under at 44 and a half. So let's start with fantasy. On the line side, Jared Goff is a decent start. I feel like, here's the thing. This is going to be a big testament to his game this week. He's been playing really well against really bad pass defenses, so it's a big unknown whether, against an elite secondary, whether Jared Goff is going to perform or not. There's just so much offensive power on this team that hints at maybe they just might. So Jared Goff is a intriguing start if you really need one. Jamal Williams, Swift. DeAndre Swift, I think, is more of a RB1 now than Jamal Williams is. DeAndre Swift is also getting red zone carries. So if you had to pick one, I would pick DeAndre Swift. But Jamal Williams may just get into the end zone. But I think that the ceiling is definitely higher with Swift. On the Jets side, Zonovan Knight, he is playing against a Lions rush defense, who's actually surprisingly been really well. They only allowed, they played really well against the Vikings. The rush defense was really good. Saquon Barkley didn't have a great game against them either. So the last three games have been really good for the Lions. So therefore, Zonovan Knight, it worries me. I think you're still going to start him. I mean, he's got the skill.
You
I
have
mean,
to, yeah.
you
The
have to.
volume the last 2-3 weeks have warranted that you probably have to start Zonovan Knight.
Absolutely. So that's also gonna be a testament to the Lions defense to see whether or not that is for real or not. Garrett Wilson, I would start him out of all the other receivers. And Zach Wilson is expected to come back or is expected to play. So I don't like Elijah Moore's chances. For some reason, they just don't connect. And so if I'm in the playoffs and I have to choose Elijah Moore or someone else, I'm probably picking the other person. I mean, well, it depends on who it is, but I just don't like Elijah Moore's chances this week. The game script. So Zach Wilson's getting the start, and it's take it for what it is. Well, I wish Mac White was playing, but he's not. There's just so the Jets defense has been actually really good this year, and so only one quarterback has eclipsed a 90 passer rating against the New York Jets in this whole season, which is amazing. They have the lowest blitz rate in the NFL, but yet they have a lot of pressures against quarterbacks. So their defense is really really good. However, the Lions' offense is also really good. They've got really good players. DJ Chark, now that he's coming back, gives them that threat, the deep bomb threat. And Jameson Williams is having is coming. He came back last week and he scored a touchdown, so he's also there. That provides a little bit more strength on that offense. So it's going to be David versus Goliath, good offense versus a great defense, and I still think that the Lions somehow find a way to win this game, and I think that has partly to do with the fact that Zach Wilson is going to be the quarterback. So I think the Lions are going to win, but should be a good game to watch for sure.
Yeah, the line did move. The line moved in the favor of Detroit once they announced Zach Wilson is starting. So that tells you everything you need to know about what this is the only time where technically the starting quarterback is back and your team goes from, even they're actually less favored than they were before. So that's Zach Wilson for you in a nutshell. But
Right.
I think, again, I think this is a very, very tough test. It's in New York. The Lions are used to playing indoors. It's going to be freaking cold in New York. It might even snow. There might be some rain. So you're right. This is the biggest test for the Lions and Jared Goff specifically this week on the road. That takes us to Carolina, winners of 2 straight. Sam Darnold turning the season around. He's 2-0 since his return. They are hosting your Pittsburgh Steelers. Shovit favored. The Panthers are at home by 2.5. Over under low, it's 37.5. Obviously, like I mentioned, Darnold's back. He's the quarterback. They're 2-0 since his return. Kenny Pickett listed as doubtful, probably not going to play now, which means Mike Tomlin said he's going to announce the quarterback on Saturday. We're recording on Friday, so there's a chance tomorrow we'll know. There's also a chance both guys get to play, Trubisky and Rudolph, because again, like you said earlier, what do they have to lose? Really, at this point, what are they playing for? They have to have that long-term outlook, which Rudolph's on the roster versus Trubisky's not, but Trubisky's technically higher on the depth chart. So it's just a situation that, we're only going to know when Mike Tomlin decides and when he knows. So there's really no way to project who that's going to be,
Yep.
which does pose a ton of questions on the Pittsburgh side, right? In the playoffs, who do you feel comfortable starting on the Pittsburgh side? Najee Harris, maybe Najee Harris, because of where you drafted him, because he's still technically healthy. If you made the playoffs drafting Najee Harris, you're going to be really, really hard pressed to start him unless you have, you're in a situation like yourself where you could do the Foreman Dobbins and bench Najee, which I don't dislike that at all. So if somebody's in a situation like that, maybe you could pivot. But the only other pass catcher, in my opinion, you feel comfortable with, or you did feel comfortable with, was Freiermuth. And now I don't necessarily know how comfortable I feel because we don't know the quarterback situation. So I don't know what Mason Rudolph's chemistry is going to be with Freiermuth. Trubisky hasn't been that great with him. So I'm a little bit hesitant. That's why we talked about that whole tight end conversation where I have Ingram and Dulcich and I don't necessarily know who to go with. But the receivers, in my opinion, stay away. Stay away from Pickens. Stay away from Deontay Johnson. Don't let that be the reason your playoffs are a dud. On the Panthers side, Deontay Foreman, he's slowly getting back to 100%. Even being hobbly, he still saw 21 carries versus 14 for Chuba, who ran well last week. So they do still favor Foreman. Steelers defense has not been fantastic, so I do like Foreman, although their run defense is a little bit better than their pass defense. But again, it's Darnold and the Panthers. Who do you truly trust on the passing side? It's the playoffs. Again, it's the playoffs. Please don't rely on a DJ Moore to somehow win you a playoff week just because nothing has been evident that that's the case. I know the Pittsburgh pass D makes it really, really intriguing from a matchup perspective, but I still don't love it. So very few fantasy implication players in this matchup. Foreman, Freiermuth, again, still iffy, and you're already benching Najee, so he's not even a lock. So
Right.
a game for fantasy perspectives has very little implications, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like Foreman more than I like Najee because Foreman still gets those yards, right? That
Yep.
Najee is just not getting. He's not yards per carry are down. He's just not getting the yards, and then he sneaks his way into the touchdown, into the red zone to get end zone to get points for fantasy. So like, I'm not going to rely on that. I would rather have Foreman starting, and we already talked about my matchup. It's favorable with the Thursday night games already happening. So I like Foreman's chances more than I like Najee, even though he was my
Yeah.
first pick this year.
Yeah, I mean, Foreman's almost splitting carries and he's still carrying the ball more than Najee Harris right now. And so this offense is just built to run the football. So yeah,
Yep.
volume game, you play him and it's not like and Foreman is doing a better job of not getting hit behind the line and his offensive line is doing a better job protecting and creating run lanes. So I agree. If you're picking one of those, I lean Foreman as well.
All right. Next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys at Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. Dallas is favored by 4 points. Over under is at 47.5. So on the Cowboys side, you are going to start Dak Prescott. You're going to start RB1, Tony Pollard, and RB2, Ezekiel Elliott. You're going to start CD Lamb. Michael Gallup is an interesting start here. I probably shy away from Gallup. But if you really need someone to cover that flex position, then Michael Gallup could be a decent start here. And then Dalton Schultz, he is coming ever since his injury. He's getting more playing time. He saw 8+ targets last week, so he is definitely seeing all the reps that you want from a tight end. So you're going to start Dalton Schultz for the Cowboys on your tight end spot. On the Jaguar side, Trevor Lawrence. You're going to start Trevor Lawrence. He had a big game last week against the Titans, and you're hoping for that to kind of continue. There's a big question of what the Jaguars are and if they're for real. But given they have these moments where they look really good and then they kind of just fade away. So but I think that moving forward, Trevor Lawrence should be a decent enough start for you to go ahead and put him out there. Travis Etienne, you're going to start him, but you saw how deadly of a performance he had last week. But I think that his explosiveness and his pass catching abilities puts him there as a start this week. But that's also a guy that you have to question. You have to see which guys are. Do you have a Deontay Foreman or do you have someone else? But Etienne, if you don't, you're probably going to start him. Evan Ingram, you'll that's a tough situation. That's also one of those guys that like every time you start him, he doesn't do well, and you don't start him, and he goes off. But I think that Evan Ingram is a tough spot for me to start this week against the Cowboys defense, and then if you're going to start a receiver, you're going to start Christian Kirk on for the Jaguars for this week. So the game script is going to be really if the Jaguars decide to show up or not. Cowboys have a complete team on offense and defense. They're led by Micah Parsons on that defense, making it really, really tough for the Jags. I saw something where it was like Nick Bosa or Micah Parsons. Who would you rather have? And I think that you can't go wrong with either one of those. But Micah Parsons is one of those guys that, like, he's young, he's talented, he plays really well on the run defense. He plays really well on the pass defense, gets you sacks as well. So I think Micah Parsons is probably the best defensive line or edge guy in the NFL. And then so but it all boils down to, like I said, whether or not Jags show up or not. They looked really good against the Titans, but I am not banking on a back-to-back performance like that against these Dallas Cowboys. So I think that the Cowboys should be able to cover that spread of 4 points.
Yeah, it's a weird matchup because the Jags pass protection is really good, but their run blocking has not been good. That's kind of why ETN's tapered off a little bit, and the Cowboys do a good job of rushing the passer. So it's really, two teams' biggest strengths in terms of their pass blocking and their rushing. So again, we've seen Micah Parsons make All-Pro left tackles look silly. So it doesn't right now. I'm always going to lean in favor of the Cowboys right now because that pass rush is so scary until a team can hold Micah Parsons and that gang in check, which again, it's not like Houston did that. It was just a really, really funky game last week.
Yeah.
So, that is not a script that you want to be like, oh, maybe there's something there. So I agree. I still do lean the Cowboys, and Lawrence is a little hobbled, and you don't want to be hobbled against that pass rush. The most lopsided matchup of the week, the Chiefs taking on Houston in Houston. Kansas City favored by 14 points, over under 49.5. I mean, we talked about last week where I was like 17.5 for Dallas. Give me Houston all day. This is a weird, weird situation for me. That the history tells me that the Chiefs suck at covering spreads, right? So history already tells me, wow, I'm getting a team playing against the Chiefs plus 14, take it all day. But the Texans have literally nobody playing. They have no Cooks, they have no Collins, they have no Pierce, they have no Derek Stingley. So they literally have no one. Now, barring, they also had nobody last week, and they still almost beat the Dallas Cowboys. So it's a weird world that I'm living in right now. But in my opinion, I think the Chiefs roll. I think they cover, they win outright, they win huge. And I think it's going to be a big, big Isaiah Pacheco day. Why? Because the matchup is so damn drool worthy. The Texans are one of the worst at stopping the run, and Pacheco's been running like a freak, and they love getting him the football. His carries has significantly gone up since the beginning of the season, and McKinnon is really only their pass catching down guy, especially when they're down or they need points. So I think if they're controlling football games, Pacheco's the guy. I expect them to be in control of this game. I expect them to win this football game. The only reason they would not cover is if they do one of those things where, we could do nothing and we're still going to win this football game. Like, they could just run the football 45 times. Kelsey doesn't even need to see a target. And somehow because of that, they're not putting up as many points quicker than they normally do if they're just playing their offense. And that could lead to like a backdoor cover for Houston or something like that. But that's still, to me, less likely than the Chiefs just flat out destroying this spread and winning this game like 31-10. So I think the Chiefs are going to have a big day. Patty, Kelsey, automatic start. We talked about the Chiefs defense, show it. They have the best matchup possible this week against Houston. So you and I are both deploying that defense in such weeks and such matchups. So I'm playing them over Dallas. I played them over San Francisco, I think, who had 10 or 11 points on Thursday night. So let's hope I don't regret that. Let's hope that's not the reason something crazy happens, but I don't think it will be. I think this is a great matchup, and I think we start the Chiefs defense because, even if their secondary is not great, even if their corners are not great, there's nobody for the Texans to throw the football to. And even if there are bodies out there like Chris Moore and randos like that, the quarterback situation is not concrete either. So I don't trust the quarterback's arm. Pair that with the fact that he's got probably no chemistry with the third string receiver, right? How much have they really played football together and practiced together? Not very much. And pair that with the fact that it's the Chiefs and it's Mahomes, and that defense outside of passing the football to the outside with the corners, I still like Chris Jones on the interior, and I still like their safeties. So I expect the Chiefs to win this game. I expect the Texans to come back down to earth from that close affair last week.
Yeah. Going with Chiefs this week and then the Rams next week. So I've been stocking up on defenses for this moment. So I really hope the Chiefs defense doesn't let me down this week.
I don't expect them to.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Arizona Cardinals facing the Denver Broncos at Denver. Denver's favored by 3 points, over under low over under at 36 points in this game. And that low, total points is because both of the starting quarterbacks are not playing. So Cardinals out Kyler Murray is out for the Cardinals, and then Russell Wilson's out for the Broncos. So fantasy wise, who are you going to start for both of these teams? Cardinals. James Conner is the guy that you are confident about. He is seeing carries. He's definitely getting all of the looks on the field that you want from a RB1 perspective. Ever since his injury, he's coming back in full form. And then DeAndre Hopkins is, he didn't have the best game last week, but he's still seeing enough targets for it's Hopkins. How do you not start him? As far as any other receivers, I don't want any part of Hollywood Brown or Robbie Anderson. I think that James Conner and DeAndre Hopkins are the only guys that I would feel confident about. On the Broncos side, Latavius Murray, he is still the RB1 there. Boone is out in IR. He is getting carries, even though he's Latavius Murray, the Vulture King, and but he's getting all of the carries, just kind of like James Conner. So you definitely want to continue starting him. And then we talked about the matchup with the Broncos, Greg tight end situation. Greg Dulcich is a great start here against the Cardinals defense. So Latavius Murray, Greg Dulcich are the two guys on Broncos I would be happy starting. Jerry Jeudy, not so much. He's probably the only receiver that is big, like guys that we know about that are that's relevant for fantasy wise. But with Brett Rypien starting, I don't like that either. So yeah, Russell Wilson, I think is he doubtful or is he out? Do you know if he?
I
Is
think
it
he's out. He's out.
out?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's because of concussion. He didn't. It looks like he's not going to clear concussion protocol, so he's not expected to play. It all boils down to like as far as who's going to win this game. It's McCoy versus Rypien, and the Broncos, but the Broncos defense is tough. Will it be good enough to beat the Cardinals? I don't think so. I think the Cardinals have enough of a decent offense, even with Colt McCoy on the field, to be able to win this game against the Broncos.
Yeah, I think it's probably tough if you're a Judy owner after seeing kind of what he's done recently to not start him. But yeah, the quarterback situation is not fantastic. Denver Broncos defense is probably a good start in my opinion here against a backup Colt McCoy.
Oh yeah.
But the Cardinals surprisingly have flowed a little bit better with Colt McCoy, which that shouldn't really surprise anybody. I don't know. Kyler Murray just seems like he throws things out of sorts. But Broncos defense, I don't mind here. Arizona, you're right. Outside of Hopkins, it's tough. It's tough to trust any other receivers. But I do really like the Latavius Murray and Dulcich matchup. I mean, on paper, those are both very intriguing. So let's see if the paper actually plays out the way it's supposed to. Battle of the mentor and the mentee. Here, the Patriots are traveling to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. It's another pick 'em for this week, over under 44.5. Josh McDaniels going up against his mentor, Bill Belichick. The Raiders are coming back from a long layover when they lost that debauchery on Thursday Night Football against Baker and the Rams. So they have had, 10, 11 days to rest and think about that loss. So they're coming off of that. The Patriots side, obviously, we know the situation there. Offensively, the Patriots wide receivers are going up against a 20th ranked defense against opposing wide receivers in the Raiders. So it does beg the question, like, who is going to be the benefactor on the pass catching side here? All those guys are questionable to play. Jacoby Myers should play though. And he's been the guy that I feel most consistent wise, just targets wise, to be the starter. Devontae Parker, I believe, is not going to play. So I think Jacoby Myers becomes that guy. And the biggest story from the running back situation is we don't know. We have no idea as of now who is going to be starting this football game. So this is truly going to be a game time decision. Hopefully, if you have Ramondre, if you have Ramondre, maybe there's a chance you probably don't have Damian Harris as your backup. If you do, that's great because then you're really ready for the 1-2 punch. If you have Ramondre and you don't have Harris, make sure you have, in my opinion, probably Pierre Strong, even though I think the other Harris might be more of a runner. I know that the Patriots love to throw to their running backs, and the Raiders are probably going to warrant them throwing that. So I think the pass-catching running back is more valuable than the running back, especially when it's not Stevenson or Harris. So I like Pierre Strong personally because I don't think Kevin Harris is going to be like RB1 25 carries. I think if anything, they still split the carrying backs downs, and then Pierre Strong gets the pass catches, or Harris gets slightly more carries, but Pierre Strong is still the pass catcher. So in my opinion, Pierre Strong's the guy, but Stevenson and Damian Harris are going to be guys that you're monitoring injury-wise heading into Sunday till officially kickoff time because we truly don't know who's going to be the running back there. But despite we not knowing that, if you have one of the guys that ends up being the starter, you play them. So you play them. And I think on the Raiders side, obviously Josh Jacobs is questionable, but you play him. He's going to play Devontae Adams, no brainer. And that's really it. I mean, Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow both got designated back from the IR, but it remains to be seen if either guy is going to actually play this week. But I still don't feel comfortable, in my opinion, deploying any of those guys back 1 week removed from being injured. So that, yeah, really Jacobs, Adams, and then whatever Patriots running back decides to play. Those are the players I feel most comfortable with. I do also like the Patriots defense here. I know the Raiders offense has been okay. They can still have Jacobs and Adams get points and Derek Carr still throw a couple of interceptions to make the Patriots a decent fantasy start in this week. But I don't really have a lean. I mean, I want to lean the Raiders. Every time I want to lean the Raiders, they let me down. And the Patriots are a team that I consistently want to fade. But that's when, Bill Belichick comes into play and they somehow grind out a victory. So that's why this game is truly a pick 'em. And in my opinion, I would have to flip a coin as well.
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right, next up, Tennessee Titans at LA to face the Chargers. Chargers are favored by 3 points. Over under is at 47.5. Both teams 7-6, fighting for a playoff spot. Chargers offense, they played really well against the Dolphins with all their key players, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, all back on offense and all healthy. However, the Chargers are 28th against the run, allowing 140 yards per game, which bodes really well for Derrick Henry owners. And although the Titans' secondary is one of the worst in the NFL. So this kind of reminds me of the Raiders and Chargers game where, the Chargers' strength was their passing, and then the Raiders' strength is their rushing offense, right? So it's kind of the same thing with the Titans and the Chargers with both sus defense. On the Titans side, as far as fantasy goes, I like Derrick Henry against this rush defense, and I like Chigoziem Okonkwo. I think that he could be a guy that if you pick up and you decide to start him for the rest of the season, I mean, he could be a league winner as from that tight end position. So I really like his chances there. I don't like anybody else outside of those two guys for the Titans. On the Chargers side, full send Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, and Gerald Everett. He is playing against the Titans, who allow the fourth most fantasy points to tight ends, and Gerald Everett is there on the field. He's he doesn't get all of the passing, all the targets, but he's there, and he could definitely get a touchdown. Tight end touchdown in the red zone is definitely a possibility. And against the fourth most, team that allows the fourth most fantasy points, I could see them scheming for that as well. So I like Gerald Everett's chances here. This is a tough game for me to kind of decide which way to lean. I want to lean the Chargers because of their offense and what we saw last week against the Bills and against the Dolphins. I mean, and they also kind of came out and played really well, really good defense, right? So if they can find a way to stop Derrick Henry and make Tannehill win the game, I think that that will bode really well for the Chargers. And if I'm gonna pick, I'll pick the Chargers to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, until we see the Tennessee Titans have some success passing the ball,
Yeah.
they don't have enough offensive firepower. So unless they're going to control the clock and Derrick Henry's going to have one of his 200 plus yard rushing games against this Chargers defense, you're right. There's really no world where the Chargers offense should not be able to, put together drives and points, and the Titans having to play from behind. That just spells destruction for them.
Yep.
The Cincinnati Bengals, who have been red hot, winners of 5 in a row, covered 5 straight spreads. They're traveling to Tampa Bay to take on Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Tom Brady at home, you're going to hear this stat a lot, is an underdog for probably one of the first times in his entire career, blah, 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 blah. Cincinnati favored by 3.5 points here on the road, over under 44.5. There's a reason Tom Brady is the underdog. His offensive line sucks. He's old, and his receivers cannot get open. They have had nothing going for them offensively. It has been a truly awful year for Tom Brady. For the Bengals, the contraire. Burrow has been phenomenal, playing himself into an MVP conversation. He's an automatic start. Joe Mixon back to RB1, so you start him. Chase, they're back. He's healthier than ever. You're starting him. T. Higgins got his injury designation removed. He's always the tread lightly guy. Upside is so high when he freaking plays because he's so damn good, but he's just one route away from pulling his hamstring again and being out for the entire game. So that's a guy that truly could be boom or bust, where his bust could be he just gets 0 points, because he's done that on occasion this season. The Bucs are a huge question mark all over the field, Chauvin. I have no idea where the Bucs are headed. I still lean Rachaad White over Fournette just with the pass down work, and as the season continues to wind, I think Fournette keeps, breaking down. He's an older running back. His body is probably giving out more so than Rachaad White, who can continue to stay more fresh. So I do still lean Rachaad White, although, I honestly truly don't know. And I think at this point, despite, Mike Evans having 9 targets last week, still only had 4 for 44, he has played himself out of being an automatic start in lineups. I think if you're looking at a receiver that you have to start just based on volume, it's Godwin. You still don't love it because the touchdown upside is so damn low with Godwin. But for a guy that gets almost double-digit targets every game, how can you not possibly start him? It's just a weird conundrum in fantasy football. But I'm looking at even like Colts receivers, the second receiver on the Colts, Paris Campbell, maybe even Alec Pierce if you're crazy. I like those guys over Mike Evans this week. I just do not like Mike Evans. If you believe in due, he hasn't caught a touchdown pass since like week 3, I think. So he really is due for a touchdown, and his whole career and fantasy value in the past seasons have been predicated on the fact that the dude catches 10 plus touchdowns a season. So when he's not finding the end zone, he's not going to be your 10 catch, 150 yard guy. He's just not going to be that guy. So it does really hinder his fantasy upside. But other than that, really Godwin's the guy I feel comfortable starting. I lean White over Fournette. And on the Bengals side, you're deploying Burrow, Mixon, Chase, Higgins. If they're all there, you're playing them all. The Bengals are just on a roll. I don't know how the Bucs are going to slow them down. And the Bengals defense has been really good. So I don't know how the Bucs are going to really generate much on the offensive side either. So I really lean Bengals here. This could be a kind of a letdown spot for them just on the road. They're winners of 5 in a row. So could be a spot to possibly flutter or fluster with Tom Brady on the other side. But right now, Brady and the Bucs have given me no reason or no hope to really back them in any matchups.
Yeah, I think that Mike Evans this week, I don't hate it. I think I saw some stat about how he's just bigger than all the Bengals outside cornerbacks. Like he's got like 30 pounds on both Eli Apple and Taylor Britt. And so and he's fifth in deep targets. So there were plays last week that they were throwing deep to Evans, and Evans almost had a touchdown that was called back because of a holding call, right? So I actually don't hate Evans. I think that the Bucs are in a position where they need to really take games more seriously. They're top of the NFC South, but like that doesn't mean anything, right? The Panthers are there. The Falcons are also there as well. So I feel like they really need to win the games, and then the next matchups is divisional matchups against these opponents. So I think that they might need Evans' help, and what better than this game against the Bengals to do that. All right, that takes us to Sunday Night Football. Giants at Washington to face the Commanders. Washington's favored by 4.5 points. Over under is at 40.5. Giants, fantasy wise, Saquon Barkley was practicing this week, so he is going to be playing. He is a start. Daniel Jones, who is as of right now, QB 13 for this year. Against this Commanders team, I think that Daniel Jones, because of what he can do with the rushing, with his legs, I think that he warrants a consideration for a start. Darius Slayton, last time that the Giants faced the Commanders, he had 8 targets, 6 catches on 8 targets, 90 yards. So he is a number 1 target for Daniel Jones. So I do like that start as well. On the Commander side, Brian Robinson is a guy that you can continue to start. He had 20 plus carries last game, and so he's getting the carries that you want from an RB1 perspective. And Antonio Gibson, I think he had like 9 carries, so he's out carrying. Brian Robinson's out carrying Antonio Gibson. I like his chances in this game as well. And then Terry McLaurin. Speaking of the last game, with the Giants, he came off a huge game, 25.5 fantasy points and a half-point PPR and 12 targets. So I like Terry McLaurin for the Commanders as well. In terms of how this game is going to be played out, Washington plays pretty well when they're in prime time. Last game was against the Eagles, where they gave their Eagles a first loss, their only loss of the season, and the Giants are kind of in a decline. Their offensive line is not playing well, their running game isn't playing well, neither is their defense. So all of that to bode that I just think that Tyler Heineke will be able to lead these Commanders to a victory against the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, how far we've come, right? The Giants, had kind of a favorable schedule to start the season.
Yeah.
Their record was showing that, and Saquon was having a couple of good games, and we're like, oh man, Giants are for real. And now a team that we put lesser than them on the totem pole, and now favored by 4.5 points. So a wild, wild NFC East. We should expect nothing less. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this matchup because I think slowly the Giants are gonna drop out of this playoff race, losing out or going 1-3. And I think the Commanders have a really nice chance to slide in there at the number 6 or 7 spot with the defense and, with Heineke continuing to do kind of what he does.
Yep.
Round out the week on Monday Night Football. Not the most intriguing matchup to head into Week 15, to end Week 15. It's the Rams at Green Bay to take on the Packers, who are favored by 7 points at home. 39.5 is the total there. Packers do still have something to play for. They're still technically not eliminated. They would need to win out to get to 9 wins, and they need 3 out of the 4 teams ahead of them to not get to 9 wins, which is Washington, New York, Seattle, and Detroit. Now, good for them, Washington and New York play each other this week. Seattle just lost on Thursday night, and Detroit will play a couple more division games before the end of the season. So that is not entirely out of the realm of possibility. But again, they need to win and they need some help. The starters on the Green Bay side, Aaron Rodgers, not the worst start in the world, but I think at this point you're in the playoffs. You're probably not in the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. So hopefully he's not the guy you're relying on, because I don't love the matchup. Start Aaron Jones, and I think you start Christian Watson. It's hard not to start Christian Watson just because of the tear he's on right now. He's really warranted himself to be an automatic start just until he stops scoring touchdowns, which doesn't seem likely right now. And I think based on the matchup, there is a flex possibility for Allen Lazard over AJ Dillon. I know both those guys are probably players you're thinking of leaning towards, but the Rams surprisingly better in the run defense than they are in the pass defense. So if you're leaning one way between Dillon and Lazard, I don't mind Allen Lazard, even though AJ Dillon does have the opportunity to rumble into the end zone. Rams side, I don't want to talk anything about the Rams. Don't start anybody. Baker Mayfield, I have no idea if that last drive was just really the best of Baker Mayfield, and that's really all he is. He's just a glimpse of greatness, but when you try to put it all together, he's really not the guy. But other than that, there's really nobody on that offense that I'm going to even mess with, especially if you're in the playoffs. Like, why? Why do that to yourself? So Packers side, Jones, Watson, possibly if you're feeling frisky, Lazard or Dillon in the flex, even though I think there are better flex matchups this week. And on the Rams side, stay away. Green Bay, Monday Night Football, 7 points. I don't know if they cover the spread, but I think they will win the football game. I think they're going to do what they always do. They're probably going to win out, and then there's going to be a chance they backdoor into the playoffs. So still don't write off the Green Bay Packers just yet. That is the rundown show of it. Let's go ahead and end the episode giving out both of our matchups of the week. I've spent so much time already on this episode talking about this guy, but I'll keep it short and sweet. My matchup of the week, I'm trying to give you guys somebody that's not an obvious, like, oh yeah, it's, Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, like those obvious players. Like if you're still scounging for players that could be the X factors, you play the matchups. Greg Dulcich is my matchup of the week. He's playing the Arizona Cardinals, who are 32nd against opposing defenses for the tight end position. He's got back-to-back weeks with 8 targets. I don't necessarily care as much about, no Russell Wilson and Brett Ripken being there, to be honest with you, because I still think they're still going to have to do what they always do. And it's not like that offense had been humming with Russell Wilson or anything like that at all, despite last week when they slowly showed glimpses. But again, that's really not much to lean on. Running backs, the running back depth is not there. They have Latavius Murray and Marlon Mack, so it's not like they have tremendous pass catchers out of the backfield either. And there's still no Cortland Sutton or Kendall Hinton, right? So it's Jerry Jeudy, and then it's nobody else. So I think just playing the law of averages, Greg Dulcich is a good matchup. Arizona's defense has given up, top 5 finishes to George Kittle, to Tyler Higbee, to Noah Fant, to Juwan Johnson, to Dallas Goedert, to Darren Waller when he was relevant. So I think there is an opportunity here. It's an intriguing matchup. Give me Greg Dulcich. He's probably going to be the guy that I personally start over Freiermuth and over Evan Ingram this week.
Yes, I like that. I like that a lot. All right, my matchup of the week is going to go to Isaiah Pacheco versus the dead last Houston Texans as far as rush defense goes in the NFL. He's just due for a great game just against these Houston Texans. You saw what Pollard did. You saw what Zeke did last week against against the Texans, and I expect the same thing with Pacheco. McKinnon is kind of getting back and getting into the groove of things, but I don't think that should. He's there on the passing downs. I don't think that's going to hinder Pacheco's fantasy value this week at all.
I love that. I love Pacheco. I only don't like it because I the guy that's the other kind of matchup in my playoffs, the better team, the team that, if I play in the finals, it's actually going to be pretty close. He's got Pacheco starting this week, so I think he could go
Mhm.
off. But yeah, I think matchup wise, what have we learned is if you're a running back and you're going against the Houston Texans, it's going to be your week. So I think Pacheco is a full send this week as well. That is it for the episode. Shovit, do you have any last minute things you're mulling over in this first round of the playoffs? Anything that you want to run by me before I turn my phone off and don't talk to you till football's over on Sunday?
I think that's it. My running back situation is the only thing there, and outside of that, I'm just starting the prayers. Inshallah, all the
Chiefs
God
defense.
Chiefs
Chiefs defense,
defense.
man. I
Yeah,
think that's our only overlapping start that we're both starting. So I'm
yeah.
team Chiefs defense. I'm going up against. I don't think I'm not going up against anybody that you're starting, so I don't have to root against any of your players. I am playing against Austin Eckler, who you are also playing against. So that's going to be a mutual. Like, hopefully he has a bad day, which
Yeah,
that's really hard to do
I
for
know.
Eckler. But I feel great about my matchup right now, man. My projections are I'm projected 127 points, and nobody's played, and he's already had Ayuk play 2.9 for him, and his final team is projected 96 points. So,
Looking
unless
pretty
I
good.
have some kind of unless I have some kind of crazy injuries or things like that, I should be sitting pretty. But best of luck to you. Best of luck
You
to
too.
everybody in their fantasy playoffs. Hopefully you win your league and you move forward to the next round. If hopefully your favorite team wins, and again, hopefully you win a lot of money. I was one leg away from winning $1,000 last night. So sad,
Oh,
so
Tyler
sad.
Lockett.
Tyler Lockett could not get in the end zone, and dude,
Man.
that touchdown pass to Noah Fant, I was like on my feet because Noah Fant and Lockett were lining up on the same side, and Gino was looking that way into the end zone. So when he let the ball go, I'm like, oh my god, this is it. And obviously Noah Fant was
Uh,
wide the fuck open, but that's the way it goes, man. That's the way it goes. I'll try to I might put together another one for tomorrow since there's 3 football games, but we'll see. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode. Follow us on all social media, listen to us on all podcast platforms, watch us on YouTube. We're the only playbook on Sweetcard. That's show it. Have a great weekend, everybody. See ya.